history of this. We started back in 2011, the fall, and from the Office of the Provost, we received funding to purchase about 60 iPads and launched this initiative, and it's been going great guns ever since. In fact, we had so many participants that we added about 40 more iPads. So we have approximately 100 iPads that we distribute every semester. And I just keep thinking, since 2011, the applications are going to go down. Because more and more students have iPads and we're just kind of becoming more accustomed to using them, but that is not the case at all. In fact, the semester that we're going to be seeing the presentations from today, we had 9 participants, 9 faculty, and I just sent out the applications for the spring, and the deadline for that was, I think, the end of November, and we have 7 people participating, and we're using all of the iPads again. So it's a great initiative, I think, and we've benefited the students. We've served almost 500 students. We've had the iPads into the hands of about 500 students, and we've had a little over 40 faculty using them throughout all of this time. So great record. Of everyone for taking the time to incorporate the iPad into their curriculum. So today, we are privileged to have those iPad faculty with us, and we have a couple who are not able to attend today, Jamie McDaniel and Brenda Roberts, so they will go ahead and present next spring when we do the presentations at that time. So we will hear from them anyway. So today, we have Laura Washburn with us. She's going to start out the presentations, and we are going to be videotaping these and put them up on the CTLT website for viewing by anybody who couldn't make it today, because I know this is a very busy time for everyone. So Laura, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you. Thank you.
I always tell my students when they're going to be presenting not to apologize, but I am going to. I have a class at 2, so I won't be able to stay and listen to everyone else. So I feel a little rude about that, and I'm also interested. So
Watch the video.
Yes, I can watch the video, except I'll have to fast forward the first part. So the class that I got the iPads for, and I'm using them again next semester, is called Multi-Genre Writing. And basically, the students in this class are juniors, seniors, and sometimes graduate students because of the prerequisites. They're creative writing students. They're used to writing fiction and poetry. And then in this class, I stretch all those boundaries. And the idea is to be playful, think about outside the box, and to go outside their comfort zones. So they have to write in the poetry genre, even if they're fiction writers, the fiction genre, and the creative nonfiction genre. In each one, I teach them the basics of the genre, and then we look at how they blend and break rules. And so there's a lot of weird creative projects that even the students think are weird. They look a little bit like art, but I'm not an art teacher. In the past, some people have said, oh, that's crafts. But they're not crafts either. So anyway, I have the syllabus up on Dropbox, and this is my Dropbox that I'm on now. And I encourage the students to use Dropbox, which is just kind of, there were some apps that were sort of a no-brainer. And somebody would say, oh, I forgot such and such, and I'd say, you have it in your Dropbox, don't you? So there's that. And then, of course, I can put all the links right in the syllabus, which I'm sure a lot of you already do on Canvas. And then they can just click from there and go directly to the reading. So another no-brainer for me, for my class, was to use the iPad as an e-reader. It saved them from having to purchase a textbook that was pretty expensive. It's one that hasn't been revised in ages, so many people have stolen the content and put it on the internet. I would not do that myself, but it's there. So anyway, so they can click these and they can get there easily. They liked that a lot. They liked not having to buy the book. They liked being able to carry the iPad instead of a big stack of books. They still had other books for my class, however, but that was the most expensive book. So that was handy. Of course, a disadvantage of using an iPad as an e-reader is it doesn't have some of the features that I think a lot of e-readers have, which would be an ability to turn down a page, to make notes because you're really just reading the internet. So one of the things I found, sorry, what's happening? Oh. There. One of the things I found was that I added content to the course. In addition to the regular textbook and the other textbooks I was using, because I knew the students were going to have access like that and that they would actually do it, I was able to add some simple news articles, you know, a poem here and there or an explanation. That was things I was already teaching, but I wasn't teaching it from these sources. So that was a nice addition to the class. And I was just going to say something else about that. Don't remember. Anyway, so the no-brainers for me were using it as an e-reader. I think more people did the reading when they were using this. We could do close reading in class, which is important to me. It's one thing to have them read something on the internet at home, but then they don't have a device in class. So having the device with them meant we could all be looking at the same place at the same time. So that was also good. And then, of course, they can access Canvas. There's this whole little suite of educational things. Some of my students did not like using Canvas on the app. Somebody said it didn't work in the horizontal format and it was problematic. They used things at home. I did discover one of the things that my students did was if they already knew how to do something on their computer at home and they liked that better, they just did. Who cared? I had some communication students in the class. Whenever we were doing something that was like intended to be fairly simple with video, they were like, oh no, I know how to do this and I have the equipment. So, and that's all cool. You will find that your students will know more about some of these things than you do. And they can teach other students, which is awesome. A lot of my students don't have very much money, so they didn't have devices of themselves. And some of them didn't have any inkling of how to use this at all. And so we did have to take a little bit of class time, just one day, to say, this is the home button. This is how you charge this. They said, that's a stand. Just things that seem basic. Some of them really didn't know. So that did take a little bit of class time. Okay, so then, as I mentioned, my class had a lot of experimentation and play in it. And what I wanted to do was start them thinking about being content providers instead of content consumers, because as writers, they already are providers. But they tend to use the internet, a lot of them, as something that feeds them. So in this class, we looked at things that were intended to do one thing and looked at how else they could be used. So this is a well-published writer, Dinty Moore, like the stew. This is an essay he wrote on Google Maps. So you click each blue link and you read this essay about his encounters with George Plimpton. And it takes you to the spot on the map. So I already taught this, but now they had the capability of doing things like this, or the expectation that they would find ways to use things that you weren't supposed to. So let's see. Oh, and also there was more emphasis on publishing. A lot of times they write, they share it with the class, that's as far as it goes. But because we had the iPads and I wanted them to really see this content provider thing, we also had a web page. This is it. It's called Strip Pit Press. I had invented it for a previous class where we did some actual physical printing, and that's not focusing very well. But anyway, so we had this Facebook page that they all had to join and then invite some friends. And then sometimes when they did an assignment, as I mentioned, sometimes people said, oh, that's a craft. Now they had to put it on the Facebook page and explain it. Each semester they make this mask of their own faces one day in class, but they have to actually do a lot of analysis and evaluation of their writing style and skills and put physical representations of it on the mask as a way of learning about what they're doing in writing. Like, it's this very outside the box thing. Suddenly these people who were like, oh, that's just goofy, they would make up some sort of BS in class to explain it. You could tell they had done some of it at the last minute. Now they had to publish it in a public forum. They had to explain it in the public forum. I think they took it a little bit more seriously. I also asked them to make literary memes. Like, could you take something that's a joke, usually, and then make it actual high art literary? This is one that does not work. It works as a meme. Knew there would be a snow day, did homework anyway. Dog looks very satisfied. It's cute, it's an awesome meme, but that's not what I was asking them to do. So a lot of them did it one way and then realized the challenge. This is not by one of my students. This is by the Poet Laureate of Kansas. Poetry is both basement and tornado. That's the kind of thing I was looking for. And there's a successful one, I think. What I like about living in the country, every little light at night is a home. And of course, the student who wrote this thinks it's not good, but it is. And for that, we used these meme makers. They liked aviary a lot. They used, well, I don't need to click on that. Anyway, Pixelromatic for photos. If we had a project in class, we took photos up and shared them, and then they could decide which ones they actually wanted to be public. Everything didn't become public. Let's see what else. So then I had a little bit of resistance from some students who had already made up their mind about some of the apps. I don't use Facebook. It's a waste of time. I don't get it. Pinterest, I don't need that. Well, I wasn't asking them to use them in the traditional way, and I got this a lot from some guys, a little bit of this, like, that's a girl thing, you know, but the same person who complained about it a lot said in his evaluation that, well, he realized that there was a subversive intent to how they usually got this content, so he did end up getting the point of it. I had them use Pinterest to write a short story. So they already had written a short story for class, and then they had to take scenes from it in order, so you can read the whole short story, and find the pictures that went with it, and then decide what content they could remove because the picture was already doing the work for them. They found this very challenging, and I thought it was a lot of fun. So when the person said, I don't get the point of Pinterest, I was like, well, there's your short story. You know, I thought it was a fun idea. We also wanted to use the QR reader. This was a project that failed because we ran out of time. But the idea was that they would take their best piece of writing from this semester and make a QR code for it. And then, then they said, well, how will you get somebody to read that QR code? So the plan they came up with was to make posters with all the QR codes for the class, and then a set of questions. So you had to read it to know the answers, and then you would get a prize. But we just ran out of time, but I can plan that better for next semester since the whole thing is put together. They discovered things like SoundCloud. They did not know there was a favorite poem site for the United States, so they all had to find a favorite poem, put it on SoundCloud. And YouTube, of course they knew about YouTube, but somehow these creative writing seniors did not realize there were so many poets and fiction writers on YouTube reading their work, and they just loved it. They loved being able to see that. And that was the kind of thing I would have missed in the past. You can find Lucille Clifton reading her poem, but I probably wasn't making them look at it. And now there was a link and they could click it and go directly to it, and they very much enjoyed that. And then they're writers, and now we don't have keyboards. So that was a challenge. And so I wanted an app that worked. If you have an Android phone, you probably already know all about this. But I used to have something on Apple that didn't work anymore. So we had all these ones that were like Swipe, and they were all horrible. But this time I'll be able to use SwiftKey. And this is the kind of thing, if you don't know, you can do with this. Let's see. I forgot what the words were. As I said, the ones we tried to use didn't work as well as this one does. But I made them to take notes in class one day like this, just to try it out and see if they liked it. So for me as a writer, I need to be able to write really fast. This kind of touching doesn't work to create real art. So, but I could write a poem using this app if I want to. I have in a museum. Of course, you can also use pencil and paper. That's not what this is about, is it? Okay. Well, I guess I'll just finish up here. The problem issues were resistance to the app sometimes before they gave it a try and realized what the point was. Some we could not figure them out. They didn't work the way we thought they should. When they loaded the stories up to Pinterest, they had some trouble getting the pictures in the right order. But after the first person, they could figure that out. We wanted to use Flickr for something with photographs. It was awful. It turned out that we could just do it much more easily using Facebook. The other thing is that this technology changes so quickly that the students will say things like, well, QR codes are kind of old now. Nobody's really into those. And then like, we should do this with Vine. I don't know what Vine is. So you're constantly having to figure these things out and see if they will work for your plan. But I do think they took some of the work more seriously, especially with sharing it online. The risks felt a little riskier with an audience. They looked at more of the links that were just really supplemental. And because we have a Facebook page, I think sometimes the learning continues because I'll post things there. Remember when we talked about George Plimpton in class? Well, here's a thing where he was on the TV. They're not in class anymore. They don't have to look at it. But if they're interested, they still can. It's still that community there. So best practices, I think, make sure you build everything into the syllabus. And you'll have to have some learning time for the small stuff that you might assume people know and they don't. That's all. Thanks.
All right. Cynthia Buckman, and Cynthia is a how many time user now?
My third time this semester.
Third time.
This was the second.
This was the second. 3 times, so very good.
So the course that I was using this in was for pre-service mathematics teachers. They were about a year away from doing their student teaching. So this class is actually only a 1-hour class. It only meets 1/3 of the semester. So it meets the last third. It's called mathematical software. And I didn't think the iPad should just be sitting in my office for 2/3 of the semester waiting for the students. So I talked with the teachers that were teaching the first third and the second third and told them that I had iPads for the iPad project and asked if they minded me going ahead and giving them to the students, and then they would have them to use as well. So they were fine with that. So there were a total of these 14 students that were taking these 3 1-hour classes. The first one was with manipulatives, which is mostly hands-on type manipulatives. The second one is with calculators, and then the third one, mathematical software. So here's kind of a blurry picture, but this was when I took the iPads into class to tell the students that they had them to use for the semester. So got some fist pumps, and they were just a little bit excited to hear that. We kept it a secret until I actually took them down to the classroom. And then here they all are proudly displaying that they're going to have them to use. So the uses that we had, one of the big uses was productivity. And like Laura said, Dropbox was just almost, you just had to have it. And that's actually what I'm using right now for the presentation. I created it in PowerPoint, but I'm using Dropbox for presenting it. They used it also for connecting to Canvas. And then since the course was about mathematical software, math apps were a big part of it as well. We used it for videos, but we also still did some other hands-on activities in the course, and I tried to kind of correlate the two. So here is a picture. We went out on the Oval one day, and I meant to bring my little stuffed angry bird, and I left it sitting on my desk. But I purchased a couple of stuffed Angry Bird, and one's a pig, and a laundry basket and a launcher. And so we had the students launching these Angry Birds, like in the game, and catching them in the basket. So we were studying parabola. So most of these are going to be teaching either middle school or high school math, and parabolas comes up as a topic that comes up in Algebra 1 and Algebra 2 that they'll need to be teaching. So I thought this would be a fun activity they could do with their students and connect it to the video game that they all seem to know how to play, Angry Birds. So one day we were out doing these Angry Birds, but then we used our iPads and an app called GeoGebra. GeoGebra is actually it's a free software program that combines geometry and algebra. It's pretty amazing what you can do with it. So the program itself is free, and you can use it on the web or you can download it on your desktop. But then just not long before class started, it became a free app as well for the iPads. So we downloaded the app. There are a lot of already pre-made lessons. So I wanted these students to know about that resource, but also to learn how to make lessons themselves. So we took, and this was a pre-made one, so it was a screenshot from Angry Birds. It could have been done on the iPad. We talked about how you can do screenshots on your iPad and create these yourself. And then you upload it into this program, and then you can plot different parabolas and make changes and try and have the bird hit the pigs. And so they thought that was a pretty fun way to study parabolas and the properties of parabolas. One of the assignments was for them to find their own apps because, as we all know, technology changes so quickly, and what they learn today is soon going to be outmoded. So a big assignment was for them to find their own apps. And so I created a Facebook group, and they shared their apps and then made comments after trying out other people's apps in the group. So I was trying to prepare them for when they're out in the real world. And you may know right now with math, Common Core Standards is a big thing. And so there is a Common Core Standards app. And so that was one that they all were talking about that they needed to have. And then after we'd done the parabola thing, they all liked Angry Birds. I think they probably liked it beforehand too. So that I thought went really well. And they seemed to have, I thought it was good for them to figure out how do you find new apps on their own too. Videos that we used, there were tutorials already made for learning the software GeoGebra, and so I could assign that for them to watch out on their own with using their iPads. There's another really cool program called Tinkerplots for learning statistics, especially great at the middle school level. So this Tinkerplots program, there are also tutorial videos that they could watch. And so they use their iPads for doing that. And then everyone's probably familiar now with Khan Academy and that great resource. So those are some of the videos that we watched. And talking about technology getting outmoded, Tinkerplots, it's already hard to get a hold of anymore. It was produced by one particular publishing company, got purchased by a larger one, and now it's not being supported anymore. Then this GeoGebra, it's just is an awesome tool for learning mathematics. So wanted the students to get some experience in creating lessons themselves and then also seeing things that are already out there available. So we spent quite a bit of time learning how to use GeoGebra. Some issues, there are lots and lots of free math apps for elementary students, but not as many yet at the secondary level. So they've had no trouble whatsoever finding things that were appropriate for elementary school, but a little bit more trouble finding things that they could use themselves. And of course, as we all know, it takes time to find the apps and then to play around with them, to critique them, to find out if they're going to be useful or not. And then time to become familiar with them. The results, my N is small. I just had 14 in the class. So I just mainly have anecdotal evidence. But it seemed like the students were spending more time and actually engaged with the material and had more enthusiasm for it as well. And something I didn't expect was it helped build community within the class. They were so excited that they were having these iPads, and that gave them something they talked about. And I have a lot of those same students this semester, and they have grown, they're so close, and they're always hanging out together. It's really been cool to see. And they talk math when they're together. So that's been a lot of fun. I might also mention the major assignment at the end of the course was they had to do presentations, and almost all of them used their iPad and some iPad apps in the lessons that they presented to the class. So the student reactions were very positive. They said that they used these in other classes as well as the one that they had it for. And also when they did their clinicals, when they went out to the actual secondary schools, they were very sad when they had to turn their iPads back in. And I'm participating with a different class right now, and I'm having trouble. This is an online class, and I'm having trouble getting some of the iPads back. So hopefully I'm getting my last one later this afternoon. And then just a couple of student comments. One said the iPads were extremely helpful with advances in technology in the teaching profession. I felt that they were necessary. I used mine to check out the applications that my fellow students had suggested, along with finding some for myself. I even used mine to make my final presentation. And then I personally thought the iPads were great for a quick tool to use for classes with math apps and explanations. And then I want a big thank you, to Provost Olson and the center. It was just an awesome experience. The students really, I think, got more out of the class than they would have if we hadn't had the iPads. And in fact, the department now started a program where we are purchasing iPads. So I didn't apply for next spring because I've been promised that we'll have enough in the department now that we can use every year for this class. So, but thank you.
For your class within the department. That's wonderful. You know, that happened in several cases since we started this project. That the departments have seen the value in the iPads and then have since purchased them for the faculty to use. Okay, Troy Como's on deck next. Troy has also used these twice.
Yep.
Okay, now in his communications class, and if you would.
Okay, like she said, my name is Troy Como. I teach in the broadcasting area in the communication department. And one of the classes that I teach is sports broadcasting. It's a very hands-on class. It's if you've been to a football game, that's the students that are putting the video on the Jungletron. So we always have I tell the students we have a big TV to kind of experiment with and play with a little bit. But it's really a class about live event production. And whenever they come into my class, about all they know about iPads and how they're used in broadcasting is what they see on the news. Because if you watch KODE or if you watch KSN or whatever, they're usually holding an iPad and they're walking around, talking about the news and things like that. And it's amazing how far we've come in just 3 years. I remember this video from 3 years ago, and this just kind of shows you what we've learned about iPads, I guess, in the last 3 years from a broadcast, if it will.
World's first app that actually lets you taste and smell things right on your phone. Check this out. This is wild. It's called Virtual Sip, and creators found a way to emit the odors, and the flavors right out of a smartphone. Now, to do this, scientists had to use a technology called piezoelectrics. They're materials capable of turning mechanical energy into usable energy, recognizable, of course, by the senses. And I got the free version on my phone.
Wait, are they licking their phone?
Yeah, dude, check it out. Okay, so you open it. So you open it up.
You want me to read the directions. Press smell button and let the glass fill.
It's awesome. Check it out.
Hold phone.
You smell it?
Nope,
Do the licking part where you can taste it.
I am not licking an iPad.
Lick it. Come on.
Is that a joke?
Show
That's not.
Show what it's like.
I'm not talking to you. I'm not talking to you. You played April Fool's joke on me. I'm not talking to you. No, that's not very nice. I'm not going back. You're on your own for the rest of the show. You played an April Fool's joke on me.
April Fool's Day. She actually licked it.
That's not funny. Oh, so on, buddy. Bring it. I'm done.
Wait.
Goodbye.
Wait.
Goodbye.
Okay, so that was just kind of a humorous thing that you saw, kind of what we thought iPads. We didn't even know iPads didn't have sense and stuff like that back even 3 years ago. And that was shared. I remember watching that video, and even I at the time was like, really? Did they come up with technology? You're just kind of thinking. But now, obviously, we know a little bit more about the iPad and things like that. And you see reporters all the time holding them during the news. And that's what when my students came to me, that's basically what they see. They see these students holding them during the live productions, and they don't exactly know what they do. So in Sports Broadcasting 1, I applied for the iPads a year ago and used them and kind of had an idea of what the class did and that sort of thing. So I told the class this time I have a Sports Broadcasting 1 and a Sports Broadcasting 2 class. In the Sports Broadcasting 1 class, I said, okay, if you want me to apply for the iPads again for the semester, which was last spring, give me reasons why you think we should apply for them. And whoops, go back. And of course, there we go. Okay, back up. There we go. So I got some student inputs in terms of why we should be using the iPads. And they actually came up with some pretty good stuff. They said, okay, we could use the iPad for a teleprompter for scripts. They had seen this before, and actually our videographer, Jacob Anselmi, works a lot with our students as well, our videographer here on campus. And he actually has a little setup on his camera where he can clip on an iPad so that people can read the scripts if he's wanting to video them and things like that. So they knew that it could be used as a teleprompter so that way they could read their scripts. They talked about using them to keep up with statistics because obviously in sports broadcasting, they've got to know the stats and things like that, so they talked about that. They talked about using it as a note-taking device. So instead of having the paper and pencil and that sort of stuff, they could use it as a note-taking device. Communication during the production, using FaceTime and things like that. Use it to shoot video was another thing that they said. We could use it for fan interaction polls and social media, which they're more keen on than even I am, I think, because they're always tweeting live during the game, and they're posting stuff to Facebook and things like that, and I'm more worried about the actual production, and they're over there saying, oh no, we have to do this, we have to use social media and all this stuff. And then also use it as a timer or clock for our productions, because in broadcasting, everything is usually timed, and we have to time things out pretty well. So we could use it as a clock as well. So those are some things that the students said. Here was my first day of Sports Broadcasting 2 when I handed them out. And this is one of the things I always mention, I mentioned it last year too, plan the entire day when you give out the iPads because they're not going to listen to you. I thought maybe I could give it out at the end of the class, but then they were just like, are we going to get them? When are we going to get them? When are we going to, and they wouldn't listen to me. So here you see, none of their books are open. I have one student here with the iPad closed, but everybody else is just on the iPads. I took a picture of that with my iPad, actually, to show what that day was like. Oops, let me get back. I missed one here. Yeah. So what ended up happening during the semester, the teleprompting system actually worked pretty well. As you can see, this is a camera with a mount. They do make mounts now for the teleprompter, for the iPads to be able to sit on so that you can have a teleprompter. And they make apps, and we have 2 or 3 apps that we use for the teleprompter. Some of them are better than others, but you can actually control the speed and things like that on the iPad. So it worked okay, and we used it for our opens. Obviously, we can't script a football game or a basketball game, but during the opens and halftime and things like that, the students write their script. And so instead of having to look at an outline or have a script, had it on the iPad, which was nice for them. Statistics, they work pretty well. From my point of view, I don't know if it's about the same as a laptop, because you can have a laptop in front of you and you can see stats. The nice thing about the iPad is it's a little bit smaller, and so they can carry it around or whatever if they need to. But they were able to see statistics during the game. And any more, especially here in Division II sports, the statistics are live. They can see everything live as it happens, and so they can update their stats that way. Communication device. This one's pretty neat. The students are pretty good about understanding the different apps and how they can communicate and things like that. So for a while we experimented with an iPad here where the person's calling the game. This will be our play-by-play person. And they're looking at the director, basically. So they've got direct video with the director. So it's sort of like a camera, basically, that they can see each other. And then if we want to go to break, we've got symbols that we use all the time in broadcasting if we want to go to break or if we want them to stretch it out or wrap it up or whatever. So they can look at that and they can see the signals, and they can know then what to do on air. So using it as a notebook, this is kind of a neat little shot here because you see everything at work during our production. Here he's got the communication with the director. Here, like I said, this is a laptop that they're using for the stats, but they could be using an iPad as well. And then they're using the iPad over here for notes and things like that. So they're actually typing, or there's another app where they can write their notes or whatever they need to do during the game, so that way they know what to talk about during the production. One of the nicest things, and this is what's different from the last time I presented. The last time I presented, I think I told Dr. Olson there's some great apps if we had better technology. That, you know, the technology was ahead of what we had here at Pittsburgh State. We had the opportunity to upgrade to high definition over the last year or so. And we now have what's called a TriCaster. And a TriCaster, basically they call it a TriCaster, I guess, because it records, it switches the cameras back and forth, and then it also will live stream video. So we use the TriCaster now, and it does all this in high definition. So we're using the TriCaster now to be able to stream live stuff like commencement, for instance. I was just in a meeting the other day about commencement. We're going to do commencement live from our TriCaster that we have over there in the weed. Same TriCaster that we're using for basketball and football. We're also going to be using that for the Center for the Arts. Whenever things come in, we'll be able to use the TriCaster. So it's a nice, it's a switcher. It's like a switcher basically, but it does a lot more things. And one of the things that the TriCaster also does is it has apps with it. So with this app, we can control audio, for instance. So we actually have a position now, an audio position, and instead of having a big board that they're sitting at, you know, moving everything, they do that all through the app. So they just sit there on their iPad and they're moving the volume up and down. And sometimes they're students, and so if you ever watch CAPS 13 and the audio doesn't sound very good, it's because they're learning how to use that app and learning how to turn things on and off and stuff like that. But this has been a real nice app for us to have. I think I can show it. Let's see if I can get out of here real quick. It's right here. Of course, it's going to be, oh no, right. So right now it's searching for the TriCaster. So as long as the TriCaster, we have the TriCaster, it sends out a wireless signal as well. So as long as it can find the TriCaster, it'll say which TriCaster do you want to connect to, and then you can control the audio through that particular app. So that's pretty nice there. Okay. So some challenges that we ran into whenever we were using all this stuff. First of all, the shooting and editing still does not work very well on an iPad for professional setting for what we do. It's nice for home stuff. It's nice for YouTube stuff. You can take pictures, you know, of grandkids or whatever. You can take video. But professionally, it just quite isn't there yet for the shooting and editing aspect. The other problem that we always have is wireless access. For a lot of things that we're doing, it's live production. So we can't have something go down. We can't wait, you know, if the wireless system isn't working correctly or something like that. So we like hardwired stuff. Even whenever we do a live production, we always like the hardwired cameras rather than a wireless camera or something, because things can interfere with your signal and it can create problems and things like that. So the wireless access over at the Weed, there's several. I can tell you we don't log on to GusNet very much over there at the Weed. They have a secret athletics ones that we get a pass for, and that's just because so many people are logging on to GusNet, and it's gonna bog it down and it's gonna create problems for us. So that's one of the things that we had to watch out for. Finally, one of the things I wanted to mention, and some of the things that I see with the iPad in broadcasting especially, I did not apply again for this semester. There's a couple of reasons. Number one, we have some iPads now over in the broadcast lab that I can use, and I didn't know if we really needed like 15 because there's 15 in the class. And so during our live production, the camera operators are not using iPads, okay, during our productions. You know, the directors are not using iPads. So I don't know if I really need 15 of them during the production. So we bought a few, and then that way we've got our play-by-play person can have one, our person running audio can have one, and things like that. So that's been helpful, and it was great that we've been able to experiment with that and see what works. But the other thing is, just with the change of technology, I think it's going more toward the other end for us, where the future holds. Instead of the sender, I think the iPads are pretty important for the receiver, the person who's actually getting the messages. So there's apps now on Hulu and CBS and every network, but then also for sports, since I'm talking about sports broadcasting here, you have Watch ESPN, you have NFL Mobile, MLB.com, and then I even put a local one, the old Skywatch, Fox 14, Channel 7 interactive app and things like that, for the receiver to be able to get the messages that we're actually sending out. I have a student who now works for the NFL Network, and I should have brought the little quote, I was going to bring that in and I forgot. He sent a very nice Facebook message to me talking about how thankful he was to graduate from Pittsburgh State, because one of the things that I teach them is how to learn. And he said, the industry and the technology has changed so much since I've gotten out of Pittsburgh State. And he said, I knew how to learn, and I knew how to learn it. So he is now actually one of the people in charge of creating the NFL mobile app. And he didn't know anything. He said, I didn't know anything about creating apps when I left Pittsburgh State University. I knew broadcasting. But the thing that he's on the team, the reason he's on the team is because he understands what sports consumers want. And he's constantly sending me little messages because he knows I'm a huge Kansas City Chiefs fan, and he's always sending me these messages like, watch the Kansas City Chiefs replay right here on NFL mobile app and stuff like that. So he's trying to even get me to click on it and get on it. So that's kind of interesting. But we are now, everything's moving, in this direction, I think. And I'm a firm believer that possibly in the future, these things may replace even our big, huge television sets. Because they're so mobile, they're easy, we could watch them at any time. They may not replace them, but we're using them more and more. Most of my students do not subscribe to cable, do not have Dish Network or DirecTV. They think it's ridiculous. Why spend that money? So they're using these apps, and they're watching stuff. And the last thing I'm going to leave you with is just kind of a shameless plug for me. There it is, okay. We now have pittstate.tv, www.pittstate.tv. And the idea of this is, I've been working with Chris Kelly in our marketing office, and I said, we need somewhere that we can market for people to go to if they want to watch live video, live streaming events. So graduation, you can find at pittstate.tv. But one of the arguments I made was, if somebody goes there, they also need to see content happening. So you can't just leave it blank, and I don't know if this is going to show up. I don't know if the internet's fast enough, but there, yeah. So right now, if you go there, you'll be able to see CAPS 13. And the audio does work. I know it does. I heard it the other day. So I don't know what's wrong with the audio here. Faintly? Okay. I may just not have it turned up enough. But this is a student-produced program that's airing right now on CAPS 13. But if you go there, and then you can make it bigger, of course, on your iPad, if the internet connection holds out. It's a slow internet connection because it's wireless, but you can make it bigger. I don't know what did I just do there? I lost everything. Okay. But anyway, that's the future, and we're moving that way even over at CAPS 13, our little cable access channel over here. I'm trying to figure out how can I get away from cable, and pittstate.tv is one way where people can actually consume the messages, and they're going to be consuming on mobile devices like iPads and iPhones and things like that. So, okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Brian Sanford has also used these another time, and in fact, you used your opportunity to use the iPads to present at a conference. So, you know, you always have that option as well. You presented.
If you and Dr. Olson zone out, it's okay because you've seen most of this already. So.
No, but you and Jamie Oliver presented at
the summer. It was awesome.
the summer at the Ask You
Really enjoyed it.
conference. So.
It was neat to be able to go and be around that community as well as present on how we were using them. And of course, Jamie Oliver uses them for his art classes, so his are really dynamic because his art students could make really cool stuff with it. But, so what I use it for is, I was a 3-timer. I've used these for 3 semesters, the last semester being spring of 2014, and I'm one of the ones that have graduated into not needing them anymore because the School of Construction has bought a cart with 30 iPads in it, and so, yeah. And so I just got I have one, like Cynthia, I've got one that's out right now, so I'm hoping that one comes back. But I guess I got done collecting them this week, and I had to issue quite a few divorce decrees and annulments because I had to separate them from their iPads. And the ones we purchased are the kind of the what you call iPad 3, which is the light version, and it really is a lighter version. It's basically the same type of apps and operating systems, but it is a much handier device, and students really enjoyed having that. So when I was using the CTLT's iPads, it was construction Spanish. Now it's technical construction Spanish for the job site supervisor. So it's a little bit different type of a class. But these are the semesters that I use it in, the spring and the fall of 2013 and the spring of 2014, just last year. And then the School of Construction, of course, they've got a really nice cart and some really good equipment, and so we've kind of gone to be a little bit more independent. But what I use it for is a course that really teaches students to engage in a conversation with non-English speakers. So it's not so much about teaching them to be grammatically correct in Spanish. I keep the curriculum in the class down to only about 16 verbs total. We only use about 5 of those conjugated properly. If they get the right verb, I'm very happy. But it's really about safety. It's really about all the construction from concrete to foundation to framing to interior to HVAC to welding to structural steel to interiors and painting and finish work and carpet to exterior and landscaping. We pretty much cover all that. That's a very specific vocabulary, and really it's our students are supervisors. Our students are on their internships. They are laborers, but they tend to supervise a lot of populations that are non-native English speakers, and most of those, well, all of those are Hispanic. So really what I try to get my students to is the point where they're comfortable engaging in a communication where English, Spanish and Spanglish is tossed about freely by both parties. And so if I can get them to that point, that I really feel successful. And the iPad, one of the best uses, and I'll show you here when I actually show you one of the apps, it's just one of the apps and all, this is just a really great translation device. It's just a mobile, powerful, super portable dictionary for not just Spanish and English, but for all languages. And so you can go to any context and you cannot know a certain thing, and you can look it up on the internet and then find the word for it or the verb for it or whatever, and all of a sudden you've breached the barrier between just speaking louder and slower, which doesn't help any kind of communication, but that's always our reaction when somebody doesn't understand. I need something, so. But the iPad makes it possible to communicate with other people. And of course, in other countries, it's really valuable because, not just for Spanish, but lots of it. So students begin to wear the language. I do have requirements that they're required to use the iPad for some assignments, and I'll show you what that is. We use EduCreations, and so I do force them to use the iPads for more than just translating it for some of their projects. And they've got lots of homework. They've got weekly homeworks and weekly quizzes, and so they've got a lot of other requirements. They can't use them on those quizzes, but they can use them to prepare for that. But they have to do 2 EduCreations to present tasks that I give them on all the things we talked about. So they have to explain to someone how to test concrete for the right slump factor. And so we have that. Or aeration in concrete. That's an important test we do on concrete. In light frames and finishes, we have certain things that are just vital to know. How to lay out a wall on center is vital. Because if you don't put your studs in the right place, you'll never put your drywall will have to, every sheet will have to be cut, and we don't do that. We want every sheet to go on there and it lines up perfectly. So they have to use their iPad as kind of both a visual as well as a language. They can type in the language to help them do that. And then twice a semester I review their iPads just to see how they're using it. And I've really kind of made this as an extra credit thing because some of them only use it as a translator. And so they don't use any of the flashcard apps. There's many that are very useful. Some do. There's lots of games where they can practice their language. And so they can advance into different levels of certain Spanish games. So I just give them extra credit if I see they've been fully engaged in it. But if they're just using it for a translator, that's okay. That's what I want them to have. But I really reward the students that you go beyond that. And so at midterm and during the final, I just collect them. And while they're taking the test, I just breeze through all their apps that they're using. And I check to see where they are and how many flashcards and how, even if they're just using it to take notes, I recognize as well on notes pages or notability, any of that kind of stuff. I also take a look at that. These are the ones that I have, our tech people. Dan, up at the College of Technology. I have them load these up. These are just, and basically over the years, students are the ones that have found out most of these. And I've discovered probably, I don't know, 60 to 70% of them, and then I encourage students to let me know what other ones they use. And the list has remained about the same. This one I'm going to show to you, and it's really hugely powerful. You're all going to go, ah. You're going to have that aha moment when you see that word lens. It's a really powerful translator. It's not been very useful for us, but I just want to show it to you because it's very cool. The ones that, of course, educations, conjuverb is very good if you can put any verb in there and you can get up to the 12 different conjugations that Spanish requires. We only use the present tense, but it does help students to conjugate AR and IR and ER verbs. These are games down here. So this one is a picture dictionary. So these are all the apps that students have used in the past because I basically survey them. And do we have any Educreations users out there in the audience today? You are an Educreations user? Yeah, okay. This is a really cool app. I will show you a little bit about this once I hook it up. And Educreations comes in two forms. One is that you can sign up as a teacher and create your own course, and you can create your own Educreations, which are basically live explanations. Well, not live, they're recorded explanations, and you can put them on Canvas, and you give students access through Canvas into your teacher account. You have your course there, and you can have all the presentations you want in there. So let's say you give out you go through an exercise on coming up with a spreadsheet. And for example, Shannon Nicholas teaches HVAC, and you got to know what air loads are, and you got to know what return air is. And so when you see all these ventings up here, there's distributors, there's return air, there's certain air pressures, there's certain temperatures we need to maintain, and you can do that with a spreadsheet. Well, he can go through it with class, and he'll probably lose half of them, okay, because he goes through it. They've all got computers, and they're following along, but some people are not as good on computers. He'll make an Educreations with some examples, and he'll put that on Canvas, and they can watch it and stop it and pause it and do it later and get that whole concept again. And he just creates them at his desk. I've watched him do it. We collaborate a little bit on that. The other one is a student sign up, is that you can create your own just as a student, and that's kind of how I use it. I don't use it as a teacher so much as I give students lots of examples, and then I expect them to make their own Educreations. So those are the two. The teacher sign up is through the internet. You just go onto your regular computer and get an account. The student sign up is really through an iPad. And so we use that a lot, and I require students to use that. For the 3 semesters that I use the CTLT iPads, I would give them once a week. I would give them one of these. I would get their last 3 digits of their student ID so I could just kind of track student use by person. I would ask them how much a percentage of the week that they spent in each of these areas. Okay, so I would just cut this in half to save paper, and I would give them a little slip. And every week I would say, please fill this out, and it's it's anonymous, or it's confidential, I guess. But so let's see what we found out here. This was the first semester I used it. The blue is using it for the class. So about 40 to 50% of the time, they were using it for the class. If you look at some of the other ones, email was another one. Other classes was probably the second or third one. And then the internet. which that's the 3 biggest uses, which when I first collected this data, I was a huge shock to me because I thought they would just be doing Facebook and tweets and wasting their ability to have an iPad. But they didn't. They were actually using it. And of course that's self-reported, but you know, I feel that it was pretty honest because it was somewhat anonymous in their reporting. And since I did it for 3 semesters, it shows a pretty good trend. And so you can't have students that lie all 3 semesters. I've just made that assumption. They've got to tell the truth. If they're going to be the same every semester, they can't lie. So this is the 2nd semester I use it, and you can kind of, and once you correlate to the week number, you can kind of see a spike during midterms. Okay, they're using them more during midterms, and the previous slide kind of showed the same thing. This one actually had a lot more people using it during midterms for other classes, somewhere around in here. So it was just kind of refreshing to see that students were using it for what I intended them to use it for, which was for the class. This had a lot more variability, but it also had a lot higher percentage of use in those same 3 categories. A little bit more Facebook in this class for whatever reason, but you know, it had a spike and then went down a little bit. So it just kind of was good confirmation for me that they're using it for the right stuff. The other apps beyond the ones that I give them and that I have Dan load on there, which was that big long list, this is kind of the other things that they're doing. The Chive, which is a photo sharing app, you know, they can post all their pictures. It's kind of like Snapchat. eBay, Amazon, Pandora, which is internet radio, and then the IMVU is kind of an avatar fantasy game, and apparently, I don't know, and then those are the other ones. So that's kind of some of the other things, but not a lot of students reported that, but these are the ones that came up most often. And then I have copies of this that I can pass around to you. At the end of one semester, I just kind of did this survey to see how students' perceptions of their use of the iPad was, and and I just kind of, I just did a regular survey with a 5-point Likert scale survey, and the Spanish translator apps that I used tended to be helpful, and those were the questions, and all of them that you see from in this range were above the 4-point area, which was agree, and or closer to stronger agree, which should be a 5. So having a class, this class made better. I feel I learned more Spanish. All those were the positive word ones. The ones in yellow are the negative coded items, just to make them actually kind of read the items. And my experience with using iPad is limited. The iPad was a distraction to me in this class, and they disagreed with that. It was distracting me outside of a class. They strongly disagreed with that. And I spent too much time on the iPad. They disagreed that it was a time waster for them. And there are a lot of games. For those of you who have iPads, are there not a lot of fun games out there? There are. And so you could easily get pulled into looking for other games and spending a lot of time on other games. Some of this area is just kind of the middle ground. It was a little bit more split, but still it's in the agree side. And for this, in the pink area, was this just kind of the use in their PSU classes? It was just not just for my class, but it was for other classes as well. They found it to be very useful. And they were very indifferent, undecided. Over half of them were undecided that an iPad mini would be better. And actually, I tend to agree with that. The way the iPad 3 or the iPad Lite, as they call it now, and then, of course, I don't know if you've seen some of the new, phones, iPhones. iPhones are getting bigger, iPads are getting smaller, and I think we'll all get to some universal size. So you'll have a phone this big and an iPad even smaller. So, I'm not sure what the solution is, but phones are getting bigger. But it was good to see that, what I consider to be very positive feedback on their impressions or their perceptions of using the iPad. That I appreciated seeing that they really did enjoy it, and they enjoyed it for what I consider to be the right reasons, not just because it was a fun new electronic device, that it was something very helpful to them. So of course I'm going to continue to the iPad in the classroom. My students really get a lot out of it. I do require them to use it so that they do have to be consistent about bringing it to class in general. I don't require them to to use it until later on in the semester where they've learned some vocabulary and they can actually use it to good effect. There's I always put this up here to say that, there is some logic to say that students could probably benefit as if they're using it in other classes, what other classes would actually really benefit from them having an iPad? So the next question we'd be asking is, what other classes did you use it in? Were they construction classes? Were they language classes? Were they classes, was it psychology? What is it that really lent itself to you using it as a device to help your academic success? My recommendation is that if you're going to use an iPad, make sure that you have some sort of an assessment tied to their use, and that they've got to learn how to use them and use them well for success in the class, just not success in using electronics. So that would be kind of my recommendation is, and I didn't used to have some of the requirements I have now. They're working out well, so I'm glad I took that step, and I'm glad I really looked at it close enough to see that it's a great translator. I will agree to that, but it's also something that you can use a little bit better for other things. So here's my iPad. Let me just show you how an EduCreations works here. I developed several examples for them. And this would be just one in our first chapter on concrete and masonry stuff. And so this is how I get them to use it. I give them this example, and I give them all different examples. I give them examples the way I would use it, which is be a much more literate and much well-accented speaker, or to where they would use it, which sometimes sounds very, very coarse and very rough, but the message is there. And so, volume? Is it not going to do the volume? Or?
You need to connect where's your sound port?
I don't know. I've never used, there it is. Okay. The great thing about EduCreations is you can always go back and watch it as many times as you want. You can pause it. So like when Shannon and others use it in explaining a concept or a mathematical concept, as you record it, you can draw all over it. You can draw your fingers on it. You can talk. You can pause it. You can flip to another slide. You can come back to the previous slide. And you can continue presenting your material. And a student can watch it at their pace. So.
Ríos y bloques. Alternativa y fila igual. Esto es alternativa aquí. Esto es bono igual. Hoy nosotros construimos la pared con uniones igual, no alternativa. ¿Claro? ¿Hay preguntas? Por favor.
So one of the things I learned when I started the class, before I even had the iPads, is that they had a hard time understanding what my expectations were. So if I demonstrated what my expectations were, at least try this much, at least do this well. So when I gave them this iPad, this presentation, this EduCreations, of course, no accent. Things are very regimented. They're not very clear. If they can do at least that much, I'm happy with that. The other one that I would give that to say, this would be something.
Hola, buenos días, hombres.
No, this is not it. Whoops. Where's my EduCreations now? Here. Maybe this one.
Hola, hombres. Buenos días. ¿Cómo están? Muy bien, gracias. El plan indica que nosotros necesitamos construir líderes rápidos.
So I give them this version to say, okay, this is the way they might be talking to you. And so I give them the two versions to say, okay, my expectations are just, sometimes I just call it, you're giving it to me as kind of a hillbilly. I'll say that, But this is the way they might be speaking to you. So you should have an ear for both of those conversations. And so I try to kind of encourage them to do both of those. And one of the other, the Conjuverb app is one where it's really handy. You just put your verb in there, and then whatever verb you need, it'll search it out. And so if you put in hablar, it'll tell you, well, I want the root verb. And so it gives you all the conjugations. This is the one we use, which would be the present tense. This would be the future tense, and so on and so forth, which to a beginning student, the tenses are kind of confusing, so we just stick to the present tense. But I just wanted to show you this, and let me get my little paper right here. This is called WordLens. It used to be $4.99. Now it's free, so you might want it. Okay. Let me show you what it can do. Okay, this is Brenda's memo to us that we're all going to be here today. So I'm like, wow, I sure wish I knew what that looked like in Spanish. And so you just hover over that and get a little focused in there. And it's a little tricky on the distance. Yeah, and other junk. You got to use the camera, so maybe if I just flip it around here. Okay, there you are, Spanish. Wow. La oficina del rector siempre financiación para un iPad, okay? And this is available in whatever language you want to put it in. If you want to put in Russian, Chinese, whatever, okay? Now, it's going to give you some indications when of course, you can take a screenshot of this. You can just take a screenshot. If it doesn't understand a certain word, then it's going to give you what do you want. I'm not really getting it, and the translator will tell you what you want to choose, and then you can just tap it off the iPad to say that's the word I want. So. Huh?
Let's see, the title provost gets converted into
El jefe. Yeah. So, El jefe, of course, that's it, the boss. That's the boss. Okay. So. Well, that's really, that's just some of the power that's available in a handheld device like that. And so, and I expose all my students to that, not just so that they can learn, how to use the iPad, but what's available to them language-wise, that they should never, ever be around a Hispanic person and feel incapable. They've always got some knowledge on what it means to speak Spanish, but they also have a tool that helps them do that. So, that's it.
Cheryl Giefer is our next presenter, and Cheryl has done a rather unique thing with her iPads. This is not her first use of the iPads, but she actually has let her students keep the iPads over, like 2 semesters?
We check them out in the fall, and then, we check them out in the fall, and then they keep them through July 15th when they finish our course. They use them for 3 classes, and you all know we're a school of nursing now. Just a little plug. This was the group last year. I had 13 students. We used 11 iPads. This year I have 26, and I believe we're using 14. And a lot of students just have their own and didn't need to use one of ours. The goals of my iPad project were to maintain communication with the preceptors. Each of these students has a clinical preceptor anywhere in the 4-state area. We're even into Arkansas this fall. And so by using FaceTime, I can communicate with the preceptor as the family nurse practitioner coordinator. This is a grad course, and these are our nurse practitioner students. And there are 3 faculty that make clinical site visits. And we used to do 2 site visits a semester, but because of budget constraints, we're down to 1. And then I make a visit by FaceTime. Another goal was to allow the preceptor the ability to give us more verbal feedback. They know that they can call us on FaceTime anytime they would need to discuss something. Also, we wanted to introduce all the apps for healthcare professionals. There are hundreds, literally, of apps that you can use. And then we wanted our students to be able to use the app for the swivel effect, where they do a patient teaching, project, and then they can use the apps they've found to teach their patients. So they do that all the time. And then also, I'm going to show you Typhon. When the students go out into clinical, they have to document on each patient encounter that they have. And I'll show you that in a minute. Anyway, these are the cities we're in all over Kansas, Missouri, Oklahoma. I don't have Arkansas here, but we do go down to Bartlesville. So I'm sorry. I tried to get this picture straightened around. And anywhere that I am, though, when it's time to FaceTime, the student will call me. I use my iPhone because I usually just have it with me. And then they introduce me to their preceptor. And then some of the preceptors I know, a lot of them I don't. The students typically leave the office, and the preceptor can talk to me privately about the progress of the student. The students use them for lots of different things. They watch their voice. It's an online course, and they do their clinical in their own hometowns. So they watch our voiceover PowerPoints. They bring them to class. We use them during class. They use them in the clinical setting, and every day, before we had the iPads, every day after clinical, the students have to go home and document. And this is an example. We're at the end of the semester. This student saw 368 cases. I don't know if you can see that. Our program is a family program, womb to tomb. So using Typhon, we're able to make sure that they're seeing all age ranges, the race, the gender, what kind of decision making, and towards the end, they have higher level, more complex, and it's their first semester, so they will have more complex cases as they move on. How much did the student participate? And at first, they're observing less than shared, and then they're primarily doing the visit. Why did the patient come in? What kind of social problems? And then what kind of procedures? And so we are able to check in on our students week by week, and this is an assignment where they document a note on every patient, okay? And they have to, or not every, 15 patients. So at the beginning of the semester, the student made 4s, 3s, 4, and now here at the end, he's making 5s. So that helps. He documents a SOAP note, and then we are able to add our comments, the faculty. We add our comments about what we've seen. So our students are away in clinical, but this is how we're giving them our feedback. And the students would go home after a day at clinical and spend 30, 45 minutes, an hour documenting all this. Now they do it at the clinical site in between patients. They love it. It saves them a lot of time. So
It probably saves the faculty a lot of time too, right?
it does. Yeah. It's real. I mean, we don't have any paper. Everything is electronic in this course. Some of the apps, Smart Medicine, everything that a nurse practitioner does is through a protocol, an established protocol. And so there are all kinds of apps. This is a new one that they have to purchase this one though for $100 a year, but we like this one quite a bit. My favorite app is Hippocrates. This is a drug book. So my practice is in an emergency room. So a patient comes in, and if I want to add a med, and I work sometimes, I'm going to go back to ER. I left today to come over here, and I have a student over there, so I'm headed back till 8 o'clock tonight. Pharmacies are closed, many times when I'm in ER. So you can put in the name of the drug that you're adding to his list of drugs with Hippocrates, and make sure that you're not causing any drug interactions. So we use that one all the time. And then this is going to be my second year. And so I have presented my iPad project at the Advanced Practice Nurses of the Ozarks Conference in Branson. That is a practice conference. And then in January, I'm going to the American Association of Colleges of Nursing to share with other faculty how they can make their site visits using the iPads. So I'm really happy that I've gotten that accepted at a couple of places. So anyway, We appreciate using the iPads. We haven't purchased them yet in our department, but hopefully down the road, perhaps we can. So, anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl. And in fact, Cheryl applied again for the iPads for the spring, and we're just going to let her keep those because her same students are going to continue using those
Through
iPads.
July.
Through July
Hopefully.
again,
Yeah.
so they will have had access to that for quite some time.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, Ben Hale is our next presenter, and I'm really excited about Ben presenting because I think this is the first time someone from physics has used the iPads, I believe. So I'm really excited to see your presentation and find out what you do.
All right. Today I'm going to be talking about the use of iPads to enhance research, interactive, and presentation skills. So last semester, our department, from time to time, we have some special seminar topic courses which we usually offer for graduate students. Now, most of our graduate physics students, they end up having positions, PhD positions in universities that grant PhDs. So a lot of them are international students. So they come here, their level of physics is pretty good, but they have a lot of problems with communication. So the reason why I decided to organize this course was to help them to develop research skills, interactive skills, and presentation skills. Because after obtaining a master's degree from PSU, they're going to transition to a university where there is going to be a lot of intensive research. And so they need to be able to develop research skills. And while doing their research, as a graduate student, attending conferences is one of the things that is very, very important. So they have to collect some data. They need to go to conferences and present this data to conferences. So it's very, very important that they develop interaction, and presentation skills. So this is an overview of how the course was designed. So the course is called Nanoscale Physics. Again, this is an area of physics that is really, really developing. And even though it is called nanoscale physics, it's a kind of multidisciplinary area. So it is an area where each and every day things are changing. So the best way for me to keep up with these changes is to design a model where, so I created a Canvas course group which acted like a database. So this is where all the course information resides. And then the instructor can interact with the students through the Canvas course group. So by means of this, it's a new model because instead of having everything depending on the instructor, students could interact with themselves and they could exchange ideas. And so it's a way that they could teach themselves with very, very limited interaction with the instructor. So how was iPads used? One of the main reasons, the main way in which iPads were used were to search the literature. So most of the students, when they take classes, traditional classes, they have like reference materials, which are textbooks. So they read these materials, they do their homeworks. But now, as they are transitioning to intensive research, they need to be able to keep up with the literature. So they need to know the new ideas, the new innovations, the new scientific discoveries in order to keep up with the changes in the field. So I realized at the beginning of the first few weeks into the course that most of our graduate students were not really reading scientific papers. That was like one of the major problems. As a graduate students, they were not keeping up to date. They were not consulting the literature, digging in order to discover new things. So what we did is that searching of scientific articles and journals was very, very important. So what I did is that at the beginning of the week, I go to Canvas where the database is. I raise a topic, or I could upload a journal that discusses a particular subject, and then the students would interact by means of the of Canvas. So they exchange ideas, they ask questions, and what is really important is because sometimes when they raise a question, I'm not the one who provides the answer. One of the other classmates could respond because by means of through the use of Canvas. So it was really, really helpful, and I could say the students were really using the iPad because there were some times where I could see students sending in information, uploading, making comments even in the evening and late at night. So this tells me that even when they are not in class, they're using their iPads, they are reading about new scientific topics, and they are willing to also share that information with their fellow course mates. So that was one of the main areas where iPads were used. And the advantage is that iPads are really handy, so they have them all the times. Computers are heavy, iPads are handy. So it means they carry it, they can go to websites, they can read, and when they read, they come across something that is interesting, they go to the web, they go on Canvas, and they upload that information. As soon as they upload the information, it creates a new conversation. And the other course mates, they start sending in their contributions. They start criticizing, they start providing valuable feedbacks, and so this is a way by means of which all the students were communicating. And what I really realized is that the knowledge, the students were improving their knowledge each and every week because of the fact that now they were reading a lot of scientific articles. And I encourage them that if you want to be a scientist, you need to be current. So make sure that you read at least 10 or 15 publications every day. At the beginning of the semester, they felt as if I was crazy. How could you read 15 publications a day? But now, as time passes, it became very, very easy for them. Because now they realize that reading a publication does not mean that you have to read everything. You can do a quick scan, pick the information, and then you progress. So the students became more and more comfortable. And what I realized that was also important is that they were very, very capable of providing valuable criticisms. And that is something that is very, very important because a lot of students are very shy. They are not very self-confident. They are not interested. They are not really motivated to provide valuable criticisms. But now, because they are using their iPads a lot, they are reading a lot of scientific articles, they are very, very current, their knowledge about the subject area is improving, you can see them providing valuable criticisms and feedbacks and comments that are posted by other fellow course mates. So what were some of the benefits that the students enjoyed? So the first one is that the students were more and more motivated. They came to classes, they were very, very prepared. Also, sharing of information was very, very quick. So each time that I come across an information that I think it would be beneficial to the class, I upload it on the Canvas group, and just in about 30 minutes, I see students making comments, criticizing, asking questions. If it is something that they didn't understand, they will go online, maybe watch a video, post the link, make comments, share information. So it was really working very, very well for all the students. And so the response time was very, very fast. And I'm pretty sure that this was really facilitated by the use of the iPad because they always had it handy. So they could easily go on, check the information, find valuable contributions, and then upload their responses very quickly. And then also, one thing that I also mentioned is that the confidence level of the students was really improving. Now, at the end of the semester, what I did is that towards the end of the semester, we organized presentations at the end. So I allowed the students to choose any topic of their choice, and then they did research on it, they did literature review, collected data, made a 10 to 15 page summary, and then do a 15 minutes presentation at the end of the semester. So as you can see, this the project started from something that was very small, but towards the end of the semester it became really interesting, because I saw students came up with very, very unique ideas, very creative ideas. And as you can see here, if you just look at some of the topics that were covered during the final exam, it's really, really cross-disciplinary. So we started from physics, but you could see students choosing topics on use of nanotechnology to improve lithium-ion batteries, some in the use of nanotechnology in light harvesting and in the manufacture of solar cells, nanotechnology in medicine, how to use graphene in transistors, use of carbon nanotubes in military armor and other fabrics, and so on. So you could see this is really, really cross-disciplinary. So one thing that I think was very, very remarkable about this experience is that the students at the end of the semester, they were really, really motivated to do research. And at this point in time, 2 of our master students are continuing with their research on this topic. So they are continuing with the project that they did during the course, and that is going to be the project that they are doing right now for their master's degree program. So at the beginning, I was really scared about the project. It was a new experience for me, but I said, why not give it a try? I gave it a try, and I think it really helped the department, it helped the graduate students. They are now confident, they know how to do research, and I'm very confident that if there is an opportunity in the department, so if we have such a seminar course come up at any time again, I'm going to apply to use the iPad project. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. I'm really very proud of Ben for jumping in and doing this iPad project, because Ben was a new faculty member here just last year. So he just jumped in, he learned Canvas, and then he learned how to use the iPads in the classroom, and I love the fact that you incorporated the 2 technologies together, and you can see results and how they work together, so excellent
This
job.
explains why some of those same students weren't doing homework in my class. I figured it out.
All right, all right. So I would encourage you to try that again. All right. Okay, Neil Schmidt made it. Neil was off campus, I think, today and just rolled in, I believe. So I'm glad you made it, Neil, because we're anxious to hear about how you use the iPads in biology. And Neil did his a little bit differently. You know, in the past, what we've heard were the students actually took the iPads out of the classroom. Neil, on the other hand, used them within the lab, and they stayed within the classroom, and then all the different students used them.
Okay. Again, I'm Neil Schmidt, and I teach A&P, pathophysiology, and immunology here at the university. And what I saw, probably 5 or 6 years ago, is that students are always wanting to use their phones, right? And everybody has one. They have camera technology, those type of things. So instead of resisting, what I chose to do was go with the technology. And so I allowed the students to use their telephones, their cameras, and those type of things in lab, take pictures of their experiences, and document them as an atlas. And I'll kind of show you how that's progressed a little warning caveat, I didn't do it this semester because of all the problems with Heckert-Wells. So there's no data on this semester. So other than that, it went from spring really 13 to spring 14. And I'll kind of just give you a quick rundown of what we found out. And it actually was, turned out to be a good little project. So this is kind of a little introduction on it. So everybody has basically cell phone. Most of them have some kind of camera technology, some better than the others. So we chose this alternative approach to document their experiences. And what we really tried to do was allow them to work together. Okay, so some could capture the pictures, they could disseminate them to other students. Initially, I also had a place where we could pool them all, and you could even pull from that pool if you wanted to. It didn't work as well as I thought it would, so tended to keep it within a table of 4. And there tends to be between 6 and 8 tables usually in my A&P labs, so usually about 32 students probably max. So, and basically in spring 2013, basically I piloted it with their own cell phones, and then after I had a little bit of data, then I wrote basically something up so I could get the iPads, and they allowed me to do that. Now what we did was had one iPad per table and shared it between 3 labs. Okay, so really we only had about 8 iPads that was basically taken from lab 1, 2, and 3 in each table. So every table within that lab used the same iPad between the 3 labs. Okay. So basically what I allowed them to do is kind of have an open platform, kind of embrace the technology, collect the images, and then we kind of went a step further. They had to collect the images, label the images, okay, and then I have a site where you can publish that and labeled atlas. Okay, it's called Pokemon.com. You guys can actually publish there too, and I'll kind of show you some of that if everything works out all right. So the endpoints, basically submission of the final atlas, and it needed to basically be consistent and appropriate with an A&P class, right? And we tried to avoid the reproductive system and stuff like that. So, and initially the first time I did it, I screened just to make sure nothing like that would happen, okay, and then published something that I thought was inappropriate, okay. I didn't have any problems, so. And then I did have a questionnaire, looked at strengths and weaknesses of the Atlas project, and a rubric as well. It was basically 360-degree evaluation. So first time we did it, basically, is just one topic. Okay, so one topic from the course, they're allowed to develop how they wanted. Okay, I mean, and that's the scary part, because I'm giving them freedom instead of telling them this is what you need to do and this is how you do it and this is when I expect it done. Right? I mean, so when you just say, okay, these are some ideas, you guys, take these pictures, label them, and it needs to go a little bit farther than what we did in lab. Okay, so I had to push the envelope a little bit. And that semester was extra credit. Winter Fall 13, I had 3 topics or content areas in the class, and they developed those, and they used the iPads, and it was completed for points. And then spring 14, I basically set it up so we used a similar approach, where they had 3 topics, but I pushed it a little bit further, and I had them take images of some structure that was normal, and then something that showed pathophysiology or abnormal structure, and compare the difference. Okay. And I'll give you some examples here if they pop up. So we'll see here. Okay, so there's one. Now this particular individual actually labeled theirs on Pokemon.com, which is much more difficult than labeling it in some other platform. Okay, and they found out the hard way, right? But that's part of the learning. And so that's why some of the images, you can see this was from Bookymon, so it's not like labeled in Paint or PowerPoint or anything like that. So, but like I said, they kind of learned as they went too. And then we just showed, they were basically looking at the axial skeleton, and then they followed up with some bones of the appendicular skeleton, and then they basically can publish it. So that was the first time we tried it. Let's see. There's, just another one. This one, again, it was extra credit. Some people put in more time than others, okay, and took real pictures on this one. So this one, they didn't put too much time in on it. That was some of our models and stuff, and they didn't label very much. So that was kind of one of our beginning efforts. And you can see that as we move through, the progression improves. So let me close out this one. So we'll go to the next slide. So basically from that, and you can see it wasn't that big of a project, and it was extra credit, but I was kind of just sensing, did they find value in this project? Central Tennessee, really no opinion. There's some on the extremes that they loved it, thought it was a great idea, it needs some development. There's some on the other end of the spectrum. But everybody thought that it allowed for student participation, okay, because they shared and disseminated pictures, ideas, those type of things. And this is just some comments I had. Yes, if we're more structured, well, I didn't really know what I was doing either, right? I just knew they knew how to take pictures, and let's just see where it went from there. They're always worried about whether members worked equitably amongst the group and those type of things. Some people didn't do it because it was extra credit this time. So you'll see some in there, no, I didn't do the project. So that's why. And like this one. So it didn't do the project. In the future, if you make the project required, I think it'll actually have value. So I took some of those and I said, okay, we'll add some points to it, right? Do it if the material is more detailed, those type of things. But they got to choose what they want to develop, either bone, muscle, nervous system, whatever, right? And then so this is what happened winter, fall 2013. We'll just pick a few here. I don't really have any that I particularly think are better than any of the others, but we'll pick some. Okay, so this one they showed basically joint movements, so flexion, and then they even showed some physiology showing nerve pathways. So they developed it even a little further, put in some text, those type of things. Not everybody chose to basically include text, but again, that's part of the open format. And then some, like I said, joint movements associated with those, abduction, adduction, rotation, things like that. And I gave them ideas where they could use balls and things like that and make it a little more fun, but not everybody chose to do that. But so that was one there. And then we'll try. And this one was the cat, so they chose to do the cat, right? That's one of the things we have to do in A&P. Oh yeah, I've got lots in here. I'm just showing you a few, but they're all different. That's the neat thing. None of them are the same because they were working in groups of four, and this person chose to basically take pictures of me too. So, and I just happened to pick this one. So, basically showing some of the actions of muscles, surface anatomy, and those type of things. And I really didn't. And you got to watch that because you don't realize they're taking pictures. And I'll tell a little story later towards the end. Huh? I think, yeah, one of them. So, yeah. So we were doing it, and then basically they show the torso and they talk about the zygomatic muscle, and I tell them it's the smiling muscle, so they're explaining that. And then they're talking about movements, so elbow flexion, supination, things like that. And then basically showing the arm and things like that. And then in the end, when in doubt, call a professional. And so I mean, they all just took it, different ways, and that's really what stimulating their creativity. Because I think some of the things that happen is we rob some of their creativity, okay, and don't let them express themselves because hey, we want it done this way. And those type of things. So that's kind of what this project's about, and I've had pretty good feedback. So this time they're all positive comments. So when I made it worth points, most people were pleased with the project. Everybody worked together well, and even you see the bottom. I love the guys they worked with and those type of things. You just because I mean they're working on a project. And it's not that difficult. I did raise the level a little bit the next semester, so we'll go there. And you'll see how over time in semesters, the level of complexity basically increases, I guess. So the advances and developments between basically the previous semester and the winter-fall 13 term, we basically started project earlier, made expectations clearer, or more clear, excuse me. And this time, again, one basically table would have one iPad, usually 4 students, worth 20 points. And what we saw, and this probably doesn't necessarily mean anything because you could, I have a baseline, but I'd have to do it several semesters in a row to see if it were real. But when I looked at the grades, there was a 4.2% increase in the class average. Okay, but is it real or not? That that's up to debate. And so then I'll show you some. This is examples from 2014. I'll just pick a few. Whoops. Let's not do that one. Just. So this group went a whole different route because I tried to avoid tissues because most people don't like the tissues and the microscopic aspect of the A&P. And they were interested in this, so they kind of showed cells and tissues, and they're probably the only one out of the group. Most people want to see more of the gross anatomy, those type of things, and they took some pictures and explained it and that type of thing. Let's see if there's any more. This one's more, I don't know if that one's going to work. But this is the Bookymon thing. Sometimes it depends how they post it, whether it actually works. And sometimes they can take it down. So I ask, that especially the ones I really want to use, I have to ask permission to use them, right? So if they choose to, after the class is over, they can block me out. Okay, so this one might be one that I can't get into, but this one basically shows how it developed from the first semester that we did it till basically spring 14. And this is, and these guys were a lot of fun. I mean, they're all fun, but they took it to another level. So as we go through this, you can kind of see what they did. So they have the torso, they have their face basically alongside it, and then they show the different bones of the skull, some sutures, and they even explain a little bit more detailed than what I did. And then they show facial expressions, right? Comparing it to the model. And then I talk about winking muscle and kissing muscle, so then they, put that stuff in as well. And then all the facial expressions and sternocleidomastoid that basically allows for neck flexion or turning the head. And then they had to include something in terms of pathophys, and basically they chose hemifacial mercosomia. So just, anything that they could push and learn a little bit more about, okay? And just showing different bones and different bone markings and portions. And then at the end, she superimposed her face on the model. And I get all kinds of different things. I mean, every project's different, and each semester it's gotten a little bit better. So
It's a little spooky, really.
Yeah.
Can the current semester students see previous?
yeah, I sometimes show them like what some people have done, and but they usually kind of just develop it on their own. I don't really have any, out of all these, I don't know that there were very many that were that similar, even between semesters. I mean, so.
I wonder if that lends to their creativity because they're trying to outdo the last semester.
Well, and that's what we'll
Ramping it up a little.
talk about that, because this group wanted basically to have a competition. And the only way I didn't get to do it this semester because I said we didn't get into Hector Wells, but I was thinking maybe I might be able to do something peer reviewed, so it's not really on me, and then raise the level up even further than what I've seen so far. But I mean, it's been fun, and I mean, they haven't been that extensive, but you see how you could add more topics, more areas, and those type of things, and you're kind of, in a way, there are atlases out there, but they're putting their own twists on the images and learning beyond what we present in the classroom and those kind of things. So, and so basically, positive comments. Yeah, there were some. Awesome group. They had a blast doing it. Neat way to show what we've learned in the course. Then there were negative. Blank and blank didn't do anything on the project. So you start getting that, right? Some were helpful, some weren't. Even though we had 2 in our group, because the third dropped, we all worked well together. And then good concept, not sure whether you really need the iPads, and that's kind of one of the things I kind of found. In other words, because they have their cell phones, right? And that's how I started initially. Do I really need that? And that's where I was going to kind of take it this semester, but I didn't have a chance because they all have basically a phone now. I mean, so. And so then the advances and developments in spring 14, basically I looked at what pathophys. So I had the 3 topics, and then I looked at normal function versus abnormal function. And I did get a little bit of an increase basically in the class grade average, 0.26, but does that mean anything? I don't know. So conclusions, basically it's a reflective, creative, concept-based approach, and we look basically over 3 to 4 blocks of information out of my semester. I have 4 blocks material in my semester. Good review of material, embraces technology. It allows students to take ownership of a project and work in the group dynamic. Disadvantages, little oversight other than procedural. Students continue to struggle with the open format and Bookymon. They all complain about that. It's like, something new that they have to learn in terms of technology, but they're all doing it all the time anyway. But, and it's really not that difficult. If I can figure it out, it took me like 5 minutes, right? But I think just a lot of times, they've never heard of it, so then that is, then it can't be popular and it can't be good, I guess. So, and it might be a tool that can be used to evaluate student learning longitudinally across various blocks of material in AMP in an open format in terms of student selected content areas. And it's worked well that way. It's possibly a reliable indicator of performance, but not a valid record of performance. And basically didn't grade on accuracy. Students completed 360-degree evaluations of group members. And eventually, I think it might be possible that with modification that it might be part of a larger performance management system or something that we could utilize to assess learning. Okay. That's my presentation. All right.
Thank you, Neil.
Yep.
I love the fact that this project is involved. I mean, it started out with the cell phones or cameras, and then it went to the iPads. And the nice thing about having the iPads in the lab, with the students not taking them out, it gives the equitable access to everyone in the class when they come in. So, great utilization of the iPads. My goodness, I think that wraps up our presentations today, and it's amazing the broad spectrum of projects that we. I'm amazed every time we do this, every semester, all these great ideas that you've all come up with. And there are a few of you in here that haven't used the iPads, and so I hope you got some good ideas on maybe how you could incorporate the use of the iPads in your class, and hopefully maybe apply for these. In the spring, we'll send out applications again. Troy's here. You're going to be using them for the first time this spring, so you get a good idea of what some people have done in the past. So I do appreciate your attendance, and I particularly appreciate the iPad project.